afternoon. I'm Diana Bailey from the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, and congratulations to Major General Linda Singh for your induction tonight in the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. That's very exciting.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to talk with us. It's not every day I get to meet a Major General, so please tell me how you got into this career. Tell me about yourself as it relates to your military career and your leadership in the military.
Absolutely. So I never intended on joining the military when I was growing up. I really didn't know a lot about the military. And what got me into this is that I happened to be working in the mall in Frederick, Maryland. And at the time I was homeless. So I was kind of sleeping here and there. I had already quit school, and because I was trying to take care of myself.
How old were you then, may I ask?
I was 16 at the time, and I happened to run across a Maryland National Guard recruiting booth, and I started talking to them. I don't know what made me stop, but it was just one of those things. And the next thing I knew is that I was taking the test and signing papers. And I think what was very interesting is that even though I had quit school, I was an honor roll student, so I scored very well on the ASVAB test and was able to kind of pick my field. But I think what was exciting to me is I knew that I needed to get away, and I knew that I needed something to kind of give me that push start.
May I ask what year that was?
That was
approximately?
It was in 1981.
So what was the National Guard? What did it look like then for other members of the National Guard in Frederick, Maryland at that time?
So the National Guard at that time was very male-oriented, so there was a lot more males than females.
Sure.
We had our unit structure was very different. The unit that I joined out of Hagerstown, Maryland, actually had mechanized equipment, meaning it had track equipment versus wheeled vehicles.
Like the rubber things that go?
The rubber versus the hard track, exactly.
Right,
and so it was, the Maryland Guard itself was a totally different organization at that point in time. And I think that what was very interesting for me is that it was, even though I had went to basic training and I did my advanced initial training, I still was having challenges just getting back and forth to drill at that time. And so it really hasn't changed. You still have to go to drill. You still have to show up and participate. But I think that the big thing that has really changed, especially for Maryland, is the types of capabilities that we have within the state. The things that have not changed is the fact that once you join the Maryland Guard and you become part of that family, it really is like a family, because you're there with individuals that stay for 30 and 40 years, and so you get to know people really, really well.
What were some of your job titles you had before you were Major General?
Some of the job titles that I've had has been, I was a personnel lead, so I worked in personnel, so personnel administration. I've done clerical work, so I've been kind of a clerk typist. I actually processed security clearances at one time as part of my administration duties, so I was like the clearance processor. I've been in training as a counterintelligence specialist, so I worked in that field for a little bit because I thought that was one of the directions that I was going to go.
So you had quite a career pathway.
So I have quite a career pathway. I've spent time working in operations shops enlisted, really working on training schedules and looking at, how do we set up our overall training for various units. And then once I became an officer, I became an ordnance officer, which is more on the maintenance side of things. And now we've kind of combined those, and we're really an overall logistics officer, so kind of a logistician.
So ordnance means weaponry or that kind of equipment?
Absolutely. Ordnance is weaponry. It's wheeled vehicles. It's also track vehicles. So one of the things that I got a chance to do when I went through training was to replace a power pack in a tank. And so I didn't get a chance to really do that the rest of my career, but I got a chance to do it at least in training.
I would imagine, now that you're a general, and now there are more women in the National Guard, particularly younger women, what kind of messages, or how are you, obviously you're a role model to them because of your rank, but what are some of the things that you've done to support both the women and the men, but also particularly to help the women that are there earn their stripes or their ranks.
Right. And now, especially from, I think, when I became a field grade officer, so that's really, looking at the major and lieutenant colonel level, it became extremely important for me to mentor other women. I mean, I've mentored across the board, but I really try to pay attention to where I'm finding those hidden gems and trying to mentor them along. Just, a lot of my mentors were male because I didn't have the female mentors necessarily. There are a couple of female officers that I built a relationship from when I was a lieutenant all the way up, and a number of them have retired as general officers, and a few of them, one of them actually works for me today as my chief of staff.
Oh, nice.
So her and I have known each other for a long time, and she's been a huge mentor, but I felt like I needed to pay that forward as well. And so I really do get involved in the development of our people, and probably a little bit lower than what I probably should for a major general, but I think it's extremely important. And I will take the time out to talk with our female soldiers or even our male soldiers about their career, because I think that it's one thing for them to know they need to go through the regular wickets, but it's another thing for them to be starting to think about, well, what does their skill set mean? How do they broaden their capability? How do they become more diverse in terms of their background? And so when I start talking to them, I start talking about diversity. And I start talking about diversity in terms of diversity of capability, diversity of thought, that means people from different backgrounds, and then diversity of people. Because I believe that in order to build a strong, competent team, and a team of what I would consider to be excellent, I think that you need to have those different
You need each other.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter who they are, men or women, they are part of important life and death situations sometimes. The other thing I was thinking about, I think you have a new job.
I do.
Tell us about your new job.
So the new job, I am the Adjutant General for Maryland, and being the Adjutant General, I am over what I consider to be my 4 pillars, and the 4 pillars are the Air National Guard, the Army National Guard, Maryland Emergency Management, as well as Maryland Defense Force, and so those are the 4 pillars that kind of make up the military department.
That's a pretty big job, isn't it?
It is a pretty big job. I mean, I report and am responsible for the military department directly to the governor. So the governor is my boss, and it really requires me to work across all the other cabinet secretaries, where it makes sense, and really to work with the governor's staff, and then to work on the federal side with big Army, big Air Force, and the National Guard Bureau. So it is a very different role that I've had than what I've had in the past. But what I'm finding is that I am enjoying the role because I'm getting a chance to really set change for the organization that I may not be able to see all of it today, but I'm going to be able to see it maybe 5 years down the road, and that is exciting to me.
Very exciting. Well, it's interesting because you were nominated and selected for the Hall of Fame before your job change. So you've had quite a spring, haven't you?
I have had quite a spring. It really started when I became the Assistant Adjutant General on the Army side. I think that the recognition started really coming my way mainly because it is a huge step. I mean, one, to make general, whether you're male or female, it's a very, very narrow field. And then 2, for it to be a female and then to be an African American female, I think it just says, leaps and bounds to the progress that we've made as women. And so that really excites me. Not so much that it's me doing this, it's really what does it mean for other women. And this really will help to set the tone for a lot of other young leaders, and that's probably the most exciting thing for me.
So what would be some of those messages be to young men and women, civilian or military, as we're going into a new era in terms of seeking peace? What would you say to those younger people?
Well, I think, I coach a lot of individuals, and one of the things that I always try to communicate to them is that they need to find their authentic self. I didn't understand that probably for the first half of my career, and
we're all struggling with that still, right?
I looked at other leaders, and I'm like, I want to be like this person, and I'd see somebody else, and I'd say, I want to be like this person. You really do need to find, your authentic self, and what that means for you as a leader. I think what we have trouble with is, we see good leaders and we see bad leaders. What I think is interesting is that we're all good leaders, all within our own right. And I think that we need to learn what our strengths are and how do we play to those strengths. And I think that would totally change the dynamics in how we're perceived and how we're dealing with others. And so that's probably one of the things that I focus on the most, is trying to get young individuals to start understanding their authentic self first.
An important message. We've been talking with Major General Linda Singh. Thank you, Major General.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
It's the Hall of Fame. It's the Hall of Fame. It's the Hall of Fame. It's the Hall of Fame.
Major General Linda Singh was just appointed in January of this year. Serves as Adjutant General of the Maryland National Guard, which means she leads Maryland's Air and Army National Guard forces, the first woman ever to hold this position in the state of Maryland. Even before the governor made this appointment, General Singh was nominated for induction into the Women's Hall of Fame by Turhan Robinson. A lifelong resident of our state, General Singh served in Maryland's military for 30 years. She was the first woman commander for the Maryland Army National Guard and was advisor to the Maryland Adjutant General on Maryland Army Guard issues. As commander, she led a force of over 6,400 soldiers. Before this, she directed the Maryland Joint Staff, which included domestic operations, the Joint Operations Center, the 32nd Civil Support Team, the State Partnership for Peace, and the Counter-Drug Program. General Singh served as our chief of the Afghanistan National Security Force Development Current Operations Cross-Functional Team and has held several command positions in the National Guard. She holds 2 master's degrees and is even now a doctoral candidate at Capella University. It is for her leadership in the military and the path she has lit for future military women that we induct Major General Linda Singh into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. General Singh, will you join me here at the podium, please? Representing the Harford County delegation to the Maryland General Assembly, Delegate Teresa Riley is present to present a citation for the General from the delegation. Delegate Riley.
Thank you. First, I would like to say congratulations to all the women inductees this evening for empowering the women of Maryland. and for your contributions to our communities and to the state of Maryland. On behalf of the Maryland House of Delegates, the Harford County delegation would like to present this citation to Major General Singh for her work and her contributions to our community at Aberdeen Proving Grounds. So thank you and congratulations, and for your induction to the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Well worth it, and I'm not sure where the citation it is. It is here somewhere.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I appreciate that. And first, I would like to say thank you to the Women's Commission, because this is truly an honor. And, you know, Turhan, where are you at, Turhan? So, thank you. And what, you know, a lot of you don't know that, you know, Turhan has been telling me for years, probably since I was a lieutenant or captain, I can't remember when. Every time he would see me, he said, there's something else in your future. You need to keep doing it. There's something else in your future. And so I want to thank you for nominating me, and it's amazing. So, you know, joining with me today is my husband, Raj, who's been with me ever since I've been, actually before I got commissioned, because in the commissioning program that I went through, the officer candidate school, you have to wear like what we call these turtle shells. And they always made the new class, they may not do that anymore, but they always made the new class paint them. And so even though we weren't married at the time, I felt like he was a keeper, because he painted all 32 of those shells. And they loved him for it. He shellacked them, they looked really good. And then I'm also joined by both my daughters. So my oldest daughter, who, she's going to kill me for saying this, but she's a detective in Prince George's County Police, has been for about 10 years. And so she is going to be And then my youngest daughter, who is finishing up her last semester at UMBC as a biology major. And she's going to intern this summer, right? And then she is going to apply to Johns Hopkins for a post-graduate program. So hopefully she will get on into Johns Hopkins and go into medicine. Who knows, or maybe you'll be up here at some point doing that. But I also have the unique privilege, and typically, you know, I would say something about my background, and I'm not, because there's tons of stories out there. But what I think is unique about tonight is when I think about when I started my career and when I first got my commission, one of the individuals, and I do believe she was a captain at the time, that met me coming off the stage, because I was the distinguished graduate, and she wanted to congratulate me, and it was really her and another officer who's not here tonight, so she's retiring, which is General Solomon, but General Diener, please stand. When I think about when I was on the ledge, General Diener talked me off the ledge, right? So she's been a mentor, a coach, whether she knows it or not, she's been a mentor and a coach for so many. And when I think of, you know, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her kind of saying, you know, you need to keep going, you go, girl. I mean, she really just had this inspiration. And so from the first time that I met her, and now, you know, she is, you know, my chief of staff, which is just odd because I've always worked with her. And so she's now working with me and still coaching and mentoring me through this process because she has, you know, the knowledge and experience to be able to do that. And then, you know, I think that one of the most important things is we talk about leaving a legacy, but it's the mentoring and coaching. So then I'm going to embarrass a couple of other women. And yes, I've got some guys out there, so I'm going to shout out to the guys, because I know you're out there. I see you. But, you know, I do have a couple of women that I've known for a very long time, and I think I've mentored and I've coached, I've yelled at on a number of occasions. And so my only female Army colonel that I was able to promote, which is Janine Burkhead. And I want to thank you, because it's things like this that gives me the drive to keep going. And then I also want to talk about one of our NCOs, because I can't go without talking about an NCO that's in our audience. And this young lady, Sergeant Johnson, you got to stand up.
Whoa.
But what's interesting is I met her when I think she was like an E3, so private first class, and she was one of my cooks. And she took care of me every single time, from year after year after year. And so when I think about, what it means for me to be able to get this award and to be an honoree, it's really not about me. It's about them, and it's about the future. So my hat's off to you all. I salute you. Thank you, and God bless.
Alligator.
It's the Hall of Fame. It's the Hall of Fame. It's the Hall of Fame. It's the Hall